whatever you hope to find. It's a pretty good use of your time. Let's learn and talk about things like squirrels and satin strings. You might think we're bananas. It's the Biggie, Kelly, and your Nana show.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Biggie, Callie, and Nana show. Today we are discussing, it was Nana's time to pick what we were going to talk about this evening, and what she decided on was for us to look back and pick out a time in history to reflect on and what happened during that time of history and what we can do to avoid it if it went poorly.
Yeah, how it parallels to now.
Exactly.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, since it's your question,
Shall
do you want to go
take
first?
it away?
Yeah, why don't you?
Take it.
I'll go with the last 5 minutes.
Yeah, you will.
Actually, I'm going to do that. All right. So, the question is, what do you repeat over and over and over again? And you know you do it. And you're like, shit, why do I keep doing that? That's the first part of the question.
Oh, she changed it on us at the last minute, didn't she?
And
No,
then-
this is the uncomfortable question.
Oh, I
Yeah.
must not have read it.
And then the second question to that is, can people change? So the first one, what do you repeat over and over again? And you know you do it, but you don't change it.
Mine's simple, and I automatically know it because it's definitely a fault of mine, and it's something that I've been known to do, and I think I got it from my father because he does it continually. And I think it's a little bit of a narcissistic trait, but it's difficult when you run into the need to do this all the time. It's hard to not do it all the time. And that is repeating instructions to people. If it is how to sweep the floor, I'm going to go into extreme depth on the best way to sweep that floor using that specific brush. And I'm going to tell you in 3 different ways how to do this. And then I'm going to have you repeat the instructions back to me, and we're going to go through it one last time, and I'm going to watch you do it. And then I'm going to critique you.
I hope your wife cleans very
Right?
well.
So, for example, that was just an example of one, but there's 2 benefits to this. One, with my current job, a lot of times I need to explain it that way to people because they're half-ass paying attention, or because they're not...
Well,
how do you put this nicely? They're not really up to par
Yeah,
on taking instructions in the first place.
they're not firing on all cylinders.
Yeah, they're
Well, and the consequence for not doing such is significant.
right. So this is the issue. The 2 areas where that's beneficial is, one, when you have a person that's not firing on all cylinders. Now you have to explain it to them like a child. And the other person that you need to explain that to is when you're training. That's good times to explain things this way. The problem comes when you're talking to somebody that is equally intellectual to yourself, and they're paying attention and they want to know the information, and you go above and beyond, and they're like, okay, you've explained this 3 times in different ways. Why are we still on the same subject? I've got it. Can we move on to the next thing? Mm-hmm. But with me, I can't. I'm a little overbearing with it. I'm like, well, no, you probably don't understand. So I'll explain it for a 5th time because I'm sure you don't understand. So I treat everyone as if they're that childlike, unable to take instructions and just take it and run with it. I don't give people the proper, what's the word? I don't give them the benefit of the doubt that they're able to.
You just assume they're incompetent.
For the most part. And the problem with that is, like... The problem with that is the handful of times when I've avoided doing this, they fuck it up. Every single time that I haven't done this, I mean, almost every single time that I'm like, this seems like a smart person. Hey, when you sweep, you do it this way, and then they'll sweep the ceiling. And I'm like, okay, all right, so I just got to do this all the time for everybody. And I got that from my dad. And he does it to me. which is crazy because he gives me these instructions. I'm like, dude, I got it. You told me the first time. But then sure enough, I'll go do it. And he's like, no. You fucked it up, of course, because I only told you one time.
So you can empathize. You know what it feels like.
Oh, yeah.
But you just still continue to do it.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, Nana. Like, that's the perfect example.
You don't give a fuck. You just keep going.
I do
Like,
give a fuck,
know
but I
that
can't
that may-
stop it. It's
You know that may annoy someone.
yes.
And you push through.
Just do it.
Well, yeah.
I just figure I'll cover all bases to where there's no chance that you don't understand that. You know, that's
If you've ever done it to me, chances are after you explained it the first time, I just stopped
probably
listening.
Picked your cell phone up or something.
Yeah, I probably just stopped listening.
And that's the best thing to do if you understand the instructions. That's what I do with my dad.
I probably just start thinking about what I'm going to do.
Yeah, and that's what I do to my dad. And he's like, "You paying attention?" I'm like, "I was 10 minutes ago, but you're trying to tell me how to sweep a floor, and it don't take 10 minutes." So
I once walked away from a boss that was telling me to do something, and I just couldn't get what she wanted done. We weren't syncing. I just turned my back and walked away because she was rude. And
if somebody did that to me, like, I would be offended for a minute, but if I thought about it for a day and slept on it, I'd wake up and be like, yeah, that's probably the best thing that they could have done in that situation.
Well, she came up
Unless they
later
screw
and
it up down the road.
She said, "Did you leave? Did you walk away?" And then she kind of nodded her head like she knew she was being a dick.
Yeah, that's probably what I would do, because I would think to myself the next day, yeah, I was being a little bit of an asshole, and that person probably understood me, or we were getting nowhere. Like, they wouldn't have understood what I was asking for in the first place. So, one of the two.
Well, I think that's awesome that you know that about yourself. I mean, now that you don't do anything about it. Do you kind of get tickled? Like, does it make you laugh when they start getting annoyed?
No, I don't enjoy their displeasure by any means. Okay. But one thing that I do get excited about is when I do meet someone that I can recognize is actually paying attention.
Oh, okay.
So when I give the instruction and I can see that I don't need to give it a third or a fourth time, like they fully comprehend and they're competent enough to understand it, that makes me happy. But it's very rare that happens.
Well, young people, you do need to talk that way too these days. Like people in their early 20s or teens. Well, you need to talk to them a little bit like that, because they just don't fucking get it.
I have a toddler, so I mean, you have to repeat everything like 3 times in a different way.
Yeah. Now, when it's something that I enjoy, like training, like when I train my people at work, I go way above and beyond. I'll explain something in 3 different ways with different criteria and different variables so that it'll sink in. I'm the only one that does that. Everybody else just runs through the training real quick, and that's how you do it. And I'm like, and I know I'm sitting there in their class wondering, there's 20 different variables of the situation that you just explained that you didn't go over. We need to look in all rabbit holes so we can understand this from front to back.
I've been told I'm pretty good to learn from in that for new jobs, because I painstakingly go over everything I know about that position. Right, and where you're good at it, you can find all of these different variables. So you're running down a bunch of different rabbit holes trying to explain it. That's what I do, and it seems effective. That, you're going to end up doing this job the way you want. I'm just going to give you everything I know and just take from it what you want. Yeah, and that's a safe way to play it. And if you have 2 or 3 different people that train you, you're going to, if each person's just given a one-liner, but you have 3 or 4 different people training you, then that right there is going to sum up all of those variables that you were looking for. But if you only have one person training on one topic, it needs to be somebody that knows it really well and will repeat it, but add in different variables and different instructions for different things. Because I have a boss at my workplace that it's a one and done. Explain it in the most shallow way possible, and you can figure out the rest. And that's not the best way to train. And I think it's important to note also that your best training comes from a competent intellectual person that learned this not 25 years ago, but learned it just a year, 2 years, 3 years ago. Because that person remembers what it's like to not understand it, because the exact same trainer that I'm referring to, his knowledge of it is so depth, so deep that he thinks that everyone else should automatically know that. And that's not the way it is. You need somebody that's relatively new at this so they can break it down and explain it to you properly.
When I took quantitative methods in school, the first time I took it was from a brilliant Chinese mathematician. I did not do well. Make this short story. I did not do well. And then, because he would just skip steps because he could do them in his head.
Right. He thought that was natural.
And
it just felt natural.
And then when I took it again with a guy more like me who was not super amazing at mathematics, he was able to explain it in a way that someone who doesn't get it could get it. And I got an A.
Right.
And so it's kind of what you're saying. Like,
yeah.
Sometimes the people who are too good at something don't make very good teachers.
Yeah, they might be great researchers, but they're not good instructors.
Well, they've got like 20 steps that are in their head that is just so automatic to them that they jump right to it. But the people who don't understand the material, like, well, wait a minute, what about step 3? And how do I,
And a lot of those instructors that are those brilliant people will refer to other people as less than adequate instructors because they went over everything in 1 hour when the other person took a solid week to do it. And that's not a fair comparison because the person that took a solid week, they went through every variable because they knew that they were in your shoes just a couple of years ago and they're not a brilliant person. They don't expect you to know all of this versus the person that does know all of it. They expect that out of you. And 1 hour, they've described to you everything, but you know nothing at that point. Because you got lost on step 1 and they're at step 27. Well, you can't, and it's the same thing with mathematics. If you miss one step, the whole rest is just gibberish.
Yeah.
I mean, you literally have to understand step 1 to get to step 2. If you miss step 3, nothing after that matters.
And you can't always, especially when you get into more complicated mathematical formulation, you can't always figure it out on your own by looking at the numbers and just going backwards.
Yeah.
Like, up to like through algebra 2, you kind of can. But even some algebra 2 equations, you might be hard-pressed to go backwards. Mm-hmm. But once you start moving up into calculus and trigonometry, it's very difficult to not know the steps and go back.
Right. Yeah.
Well, I forgot what I was going to say.
Oh, sorry.
So
The thing about getting older is true. Like now, I need a completely different way
your
of
back hurts more.
Geritol.
being like somebody give. What is Geritol?
I don't know. Everybody
All right,
always refers to it. Smells funny though.
Is it like Bengay?
I think so.
Okay.
It's like Bengay before it was name brand.
Well, like somebody could give me and I'm not that old, but I could feel little subtle things where like somebody would give me instruction and where I was able to process it really, really fast in the past. I'm a little slow now, and like I have to ask for help more than I used to. I used to figure out shit really quick.
I get that.
Not now.
Press Apple P and it will print. Move.
So Joe explains the brain. I liked it because he was talking to some brain wizard, some neuro whateverist,
Neuroscientist.
and yeah, the way that Joe explained it, like he gave his interpretation of it, and then this neuro guy was like, "No, you're exactly right. That's exactly how it works." And I was really impressed. But he broke it down in a very simple way, and I think it makes sense for me specifically because I talk to certain people that I can tell that they're a little bit bird brain and their processing speed is not as high as mine, but when I talk to them, they also have a great memory. Like now, there's some people that are just burned out all around, no processing, no memory. But he described it as hard drive versus RAM, and he said you only have so much computing power in your head. Is your computing power in your brain? Is it geared towards RAM or is it geared towards like disk space? And I was like, that is a good point because for me, the way that I interpret that and say, yes, that's true and accurate, from the way I feel, is I can't remember anything. Like, I have a terrible memory, but I'm super organized to make up for that. To where I take copious notes on everything. Everything's in alphabetical order. Everything's filed properly. Like, that's how I live my life. Because if I just had to remember shit, I would just fall apart. Like, I would be completely useless. But my processing speed is high. So I may not be able to remember my, because my mom the other day is like, you don't remember that? We went there on a vacation. We spent a whole week there. I'm like, no, I've never been to Tallahassee, ever. And she's like, yeah, you were 15. You were practically a grown person. How in the hell do you not remember that? And I was like, I really don't. But she can remember things from when she was like, she says, from when she was like 4 or 5 years old. And I'm like, that's impossible.
I can.
Like, and some people can. I cannot remember things from that early. And I do question, though, can people actually remember the events? Or do they remember that the events happened and the stories that came from them and they repeated it or they heard it from somebody? I do have to ask that. Right. I think it's a combination of both. You might have a vague, fuzzy memory of that and certain smells bring it back or things like that, trigger it in the head.
Recall.
But to actually remember it through your own eyes as like you remembering what you ate for dinner yesterday, like, I don't know if it's that clear of a memory. I think a lot of it is based off story. So if somebody tells you over a period of time the walls weren't purple, they were green, then eventually in your mind,
it's kind of like
the walls are green.
fuzzy. Like, my childhood memories are very fuzzy, but they're clear, but they're fuzzy.
Well, you could have false memories.
Like, I knew I was there, and
Right.
I could see the room around me, but it's like fuzzy.
Yeah.
Because I remember my crib was in the kitchen, and my parents' room was just across the way there. But I remember being like, I don't know, 12 months, 15 months old, crawling out of the crib and going into their room and getting into bed.
I'm not saying that may be true 100%, and it probably is, but I just find it hard to interpret because I can't remember when I was like 15. But also, I've had a whole bunch of really, really heavy head injuries in my life. So there's a possibility that kind of crippled my memory to a certain extent. But the thing is, a lot of these things also, I feel that my RAM...
I can see it.
Right. I feel, though, that my RAM, my processing power it's taken place where that hard drive space has kind of disappeared. But I can remember certain things, steps for things that I do every day, steps for my job. I have good computing power and good memory for those types of things. But it's almost like I've kicked out the useless memories. Why would I remember my 7th birthday party? I have no need for that. I need to remember who's in this position that can change this for me in life or how to do this process that helps out my job. I don't need that 7-year-old memory anymore.
I remember my 7-year-old birthday party. I had one of those sheet cakes, and it had the little fake palm trees and little plastic dinosaurs on it.
I
remember getting a G.I. Joe. It was the one, like the tank. It was the bad guys. It was Cobra. And it was the tank with the big red gun on top.
See, the only birthday I can remember is my 21st birthday, because that was special. And I remember as I was experiencing
You can't remember your
it.
birthdays.
Well, I haven't really celebrated a birthday since I was 21. Like, that was the last birthday I celebrated, because after 21, who the fuck cares? But my 21st birthday, I remember as I was sitting there and getting beat by a belt with these strippers, like, I was thinking to myself, I'm going to purposely burn this memory into my brain because I'm with all of my Marines. I'm having the best time of my life.
Sure.
I'm hammered. The strippers love me. Like, it was just great. So I purposely... I sat there and consciously said, I'm going to make sure that I can remember this to the best of my ability. About an hour after that, I was blacked out drunk, so I don't remember that, of course. But up until that point, that's been one of my best memories, and I keep that. I bottle it up inside, and I keep that memory. But if I didn't think about it, I think I would forget it. Does that make sense?
I remember so many just crazy. I remember the first time I met you. You had a shaved head. And you were wearing those glasses.
You had a shaved head.
Hell yeah. He looked like a boot. Not completely shaved.
Not like yours.
Yeah.
Oh, like a buzz cut.
And I remember I liked him immediately because he just didn't seem to give a shit.
Sounds like Callie. I like it.
Yeah. I was like, okay, he's a cool guy. Then he trained me. I remember that. I remember the first conversation that you had, which was very inappropriate. It was with the guy. I think that's how you were like connecting with him though. Y'all were having like a sexual conversation, and Callie said yeah, I used to date this little Asian girl and she wanted to have sex all the time. That was the first time I had hung out with him trying to learn the job, and I'm like, this is weird. Therapists talk about sex, and I didn't know.
You learned all about his ferocious Asian lover.
I was like, did I need to hear all that?
I'm trying to think which Asian lover it was.
Well,
probably the one that sounded like a child.
Well, it didn't impress me. It made me like grossed out. Now I can be like laughing about it, but back then I'm like, ugh.
Well, also those non-normal ways of communicating with people, like, and I know this is that was funny, but this is like a more serious, like, I think that it's important to be able to talk to different. The problem with things like therapy and counseling is that they want you to be very rigid in it. And I like the fact that you can step out of that and say, well, this person's not going to.
Yeah, hopefully you have the ability to discern who you can talk like that with and who you can't.
And that's what he did. That's what he did. Because after I'm like, well, I was on my high horse about them, talking about sex and everything. And then later I was like, he's just being himself. I'm like, that's cool.
Right.
You can kind of at least respect somebody who's going to be themselves no matter what. At least I can respect that.
I like that. I remember the first person that we talked to together. I don't know if you remember him. Red-haired guy. Kind of jacked. But,
Is it meth?
Yeah, that guy.
The functioning meth addict?
Yes. He was very functioning, though. Didn't look like it.
For a brief time.
Yeah. He seemed squared away, but I do remember I was surprised that... I think we both liked each other because you saw my... rugged attitude towards him come out, and then I saw the same thing with you, yet you were a counselor, so that was unexpected from you. So I was like, that's pretty cool, because that guy needed that. That's what he needed, was a actual talking to, like a stern talking to, versus everything's okay and a pat on the back. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well...
And he wouldn't have reacted to a pat on the back. He wouldn't. That would have.
Not in that scenario. Like if it was an actual therapeutic scenario where he'd been making progress with his addiction and he needed some kind of validation. But that's not where we were at.
No, we were just at the thinking point. Like you need to make a change.
Yeah, that was very motivational enhancement therapy, where you're just trying to bring awareness and have him look at something in a different perspective.
Right.
It still wasn't very judgmental, but it was just, for
him to recognize consequences, I think was important, but for him to hear it from me, where I was the one that would bring upon the consequences, I don't think it would have been as effective as hearing it from someone like yourself saying, hey, he's not lying. No, this is the consequence that will happen.
And when you're doing MET, you don't want it to be you. You want it more generalized, because that way you can circumnavigate the defense mechanisms. Because if they just feel like they're being attacked, they're just going to put up their wall and they're going to block you out. But if you're just saying, I know people who've had, this kind of problem, and this is what's happened with them over the years, and they're like, oh, well, that's not me. But, a week down the road, they might be thinking, maybe that is.
Right.
But if I say, this is what's going to happen to you if you do this.
Right.
They're going to instantly say, no, it's not, fuck you.
Yeah, and that was probably what I was doing, which was, but at the same time where we tag teamed it. I think that
good cop, bad cop.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's super effective. I remember I had to deal with one with the Vice guys and play good cop, bad cop, which was very interesting, because we had to get some information out of a person, and it was just really fun because I was the one that held all the keys, and they needed information, so we were able to play that back and forth. And this person had respect for one person, which was me, but not respect for the other guys that needed the information, so we were able to play off each other and got what we needed.
He goes in and he increases the water on the water board. And then I come in and I'm just like, no, man, that's just too much. Don't listen to
I
him.
tapped that little incandescent swinging light above us and just watched it swing back and forth. And then he's sitting on the other side, like, pouring sweat. And, Callie's sitting there talking to him. And I walk in, and I have an envelope in my hand. I was like, I start throwing out pictures of my dogs, and I grab them by the collar, and I pull them down. I'm like, you can't look at the fucking pictures because you know you did it. Yeah, that was a good time. Good times. He's like, are these pictures of your dog?
I had something else to say, but just a nice little segue.
You didn't mention the thing that you repeat all the time.
Oh, no, I'm going to let you go next.
Oh, she caught you.
Yeah.
I mean, it's quite in, clockwise.
Yeah, I guess we can go
It's clockwise.
clockwise.
It's the way the world works.
Water
Unless you're in Australia.
Yeah, I was going to say, water does not always flow that way.
That's
Depends on where you are in the equator. With me...
You had a segue, though, before we got there, didn't you?
It's okay.
You sure?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, if we just don't let me go, I'm probably just not going to.
It's true. We know.
Let's see. With me, you actually kind of mentioned it when you...
Isn't that funny?
When you said that you had first met me, I had that kind of attitude like I just didn't care.
Oh, okay.
And that's just kind of me all the time.
Pretty much. Until somebody gets to know you.
No, even then, my deeper levels, most things I don't care about. I mean, there's some things, of course,
Yeah.
I'm passionate about. Most things, I'll just enjoy the conversation, but ultimately, I don't really give a shit about. There's a couple things, though.
It's basically you're just dead inside.
I try,
Been dead inside for a long time.
Who wants to feel?
It is unpleasant.
Well, no, it's not apathy. It's just a personality type.
Is that it?
You have to. I'm very type B. You have to like really make me have to care about it. Like, the only way to get me to really raise my voice is if you start yelling at me.
So you keep doing that? That's a behavior you keep doing that you don't change? Like,
Well,
are you conscious
It's
of
my
it?
personality type. You know how much effort it would be to be a different person?
How has that impacted your life and were you always like that?
Well, yeah, people just think I don't care about anything.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
So take me back to Callie growing up. Did you get like shit from teachers? Or, did they notice that personality type? Like it was like in an excessive way?
Yeah, I mean, teachers.
Just like, meh.
I was that kid that just sat there in class and doodled and drew. But I didn't, my doodles, because I'm pretty artistic, my doodles were very ornate and elaborate. So, like, there'd be, like, no notes and just, like, these huge drawings. I'd be, like, with all the different colors and everything out there, and it pretty obvious I just wasn't paying attention. And they'd ask me, I'd be like, oh, no, I got it.
Did you?
Well, that's ADHD, right?
I was diagnosed with that as a kid, but they
Or
diagnosed that with everybody.
Yeah.
Because you're bored.
Yeah, because you can't sit in a chair for 8 hours straight and learn reading and arithmetic.
Right, which is normal for a
Yeah.
human.
Humans aren't meant to sit in a chair for 8 hours.
It's not how we learn.
But
No.
how has it been a consequence for you? Like, what have you noticed in your life where people think that you don't give a shit. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Wouldn't that be obvious? Like interpersonal relationships.
Okay.
Like I tend to do better with guys because most guys, like with Biggie, I don't need
Also, don't give a shit.
Yeah, I don't have to get super deep. It's like, well, what do you mean? Well, how do you really feel about that? Like, I feel like I don't want to talk about it.
And generally, I'm like, okay.
No gay. Unless
It's
it's
true.
like something funny or something that we're both passionate about, which there's a couple
So,
things.
What about, like, I always took it that you were, like, it was a purposeful thing. Just to, like,
Well, if it's part of
wanted
your
somebody
personality, then it is purposeful to some extent.
Well, I thought it was like a show. Like
Are you asking if it's a defense mechanism of his?
I don't know.
Or I'm just pretending.
Just to be a dick. Or to be, like, trying to get out of the thing. You know, like, some people do that. Like, they take on personality traits to try not to get involved. You know, I used to think that was sort of some of the way you behaved.
The funny thing is, I rarely have that problem in therapy. And it's kind of like a lot of women tend to like me because of that. And I will add a little asterisk at the end of that for a while. Because if women who have, and a lot of women, I hate to say it, have anxiety, I think it's evolutionary. And to worry about things, I think it's important for them to have to worry about things. And so that energy that I have where I don't worry about anything, practically, I mean, it's got to be really big for me to worry about it. It makes them feel more calm and at ease. Now, years down the road, it becomes, well, you don't care about anything. And where in the beginning it was, it just made me feel relaxed and safe and secure because they're not freaking out about this. And one of the things that I learned in marriage and family therapy, when you're looking at partners, oftentimes the things that attract you to that person initially are years down the road what drives you crazy about them. So
Yeah, that makes sense.
So it goes from, oh man, he's so chill and laid back and he doesn't worry about things. He makes me feel more at ease, to, he doesn't seem to care about anything I care about. Why can't I get this guy motivated?
You don't care.
It's not that I don't care. Ish.
I never did.
Well,
I'm also just not very emotive.
true.
And so sometimes it's not that I don't care. It's just that I don't necessarily show that. And see, guys don't care, which is why I get along so well with guys. They don't expect
They don't
that.
need they don't need, like, the expression.
Not only do
Women do.
Not only do they not need it, they often don't want it.
Yeah.
Right.
We do get irritated ridden. That is true.
Yeah.
So I can come
I get
across a little cold, even though that's rarely been an issue in a therapy session. And maybe it is because they're coming in all worried and anxious and anxiety ridden, and I'm that.
Well, there's a neutrality to you that is really, I don't know what to say. It's really
I'm sure
good. It's a good thing.
I'm sure it's refreshing because I imagine that if I went to a counseling session and someone was like, it's all about you and I am going to try to get inside your head and fix you, versus someone saying, I'm going to hear you out and then I'm going to explain how this generally works. It's up to you if you want to be a part of
Like,
this.
somebody could
Like, that is refreshing.
tell him that they're a murderer, and you'll be like, yeah.
Well, yeah,
you know?
because those
And
are
that's
folks I
what
work
people
with.
need.
And
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's
and
not a bad
so,
thing.
You know, I've had one of my gripes is when I make a mistake as a human being, and the person will say, "You should know better. You're a therapist," as if that disqualifies me from being a regular human being.
That's right.
And you know, and I'm just like, I have a phrase when I hear that I say, and that is, I'm not a touchy-feely therapist. I'm all right, tell me what's going on. Let's get to the root of it. Let's find the patterns, and let's give you the tools you need to fix it. And I probably do not do well with the clients who just want somebody to nod their head and say, "Oh, they're there."
Well, not everybody needs that. Not everybody wants it.
Well, in my experience, most of the people who go to therapy looking for that, they don't really want to change.
Well, you're right. You're right about that.
They're wanting
because
somebody
they
to
want
just-
somebody to just agree with them.
Yeah, someone to tell them, "Oh no, you were in the right. It's everyone else's fault."
They want a fan.
But the other thing about my personality that probably helps, you realize with the clientele that I typically work with, they probably come from an environment that's insane. So to actually just be in a room with someone like me probably sucks all that crazy energy out in a good way,
Yeah.
right? It adds more stability.
It really does.
That's true, because if you were to put them with a therapist or a counselor that also has a honey boo boo lifestyle,
Well,
a Jerry Springer lifestyle.
I can actually tell you exactly. We used to work with, and you've met this person.
I know who you're yeah.
She drove away almost every client that she ever had.
Because her problems were bigger than the client's.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's like you can only get as good as your therapist, right?
Yeah.
And even someone who comes in with panic attacks can sit with that person for 10 minutes and be like, "I'm healthier than this person."
Yeah.
That's not
Yeah,
good.
that's the truth of the matter.
And
Yeah.
yeah, so it hasn't really hurt me professionally. Actually, I would say it's helped me professionally. Personally, you know, I know I come across, I'm sure, as apathetic. And it's not that I am apathetic. This is just kind of my personality.
Do you want to be have you ever wanted to be different?
No, I like who I am. Why the fuck should I change for other people?
Okay. Fair enough.
I mean, I get tired of people who want to change me. I worked a long time to like who I am. So why should I tolerate anything different?
I do get that, and I think it's important that, like, for example, myself, like, with my job, I'm very heavy-handed. I'm not a pat on the back type of person, and there's only me and one other person in my office that is, well, two other people in my office that are, in my opinion, heavy-handed. The remainder, which is the vast majority of my office, is very, they want to help, but they're sweet people. And the majority of they'll do everything they can. They'll bend over backwards to help this person before putting their foot down. And that's just not my personality type. So that's why, like, with my position, I said I would rather do the heavy-handed work, to where that's the majority of what I do, and let the rest of them do their counseling thing.
You know, it's funny.
So, and that's exactly what they gave me. So I think it's important when you have a personality type, like you just said, you've got to find the right position for that. Because I could never be a counselor.
Well, you know what's funny? Like, nobody ever asked me for help with anything outside of people who come in, yes, clients. And I'm actually the kind of person that would probably help whenever someone asks me to. It's like, "Oh, I need to move. Can you help me?" "Okay." I need to build some bookshelves for my kid. "Can you help?" "Okay." But nobody ever asked me, probably because I come across so nonchalant and apathetic. but I actually am the person that would come help someone
That's
do
how you get out of doing stuff. That's why I asked that question. If you amp it up.
But
So there is a benefit.
But
I don't gotta go help.
But I would.
Okay.
So I don't avoid people.
I'm pretty bad for that. Like, I'm not. It's probably best not to ask me to do anything. Like, I do the bare minimum with my job. Like, not in a bad way. I do my job extremely effectively. Mm-hmm. But because I do that, I justify not doing anything else. So don't ask me to do any of the as required items with in regards to my job, because those are things that I don't enjoy doing, and they're not things that I'm real good at. I want to not be the jack of all trades. I have no desire to do that. I want to be the master of one trade.
Why?
And that also works in life too. You know, if I don't know how to replace an alternator on my car, that's fine. I want somebody who does that as a job to be able to do that, because I'm giving him a job. So if I am good at my job, this is where me and my dad get when I was younger, where we would get confused on, is he would say, well, you need to learn to do this for yourself. You need to learn to do this for yourself. And think about the time that you're going to save and the money that you're going to save if you do this yourself. And I said, wouldn't it make more sense for me to just work an extra hour of what I'm actually good at, and I'll be making enough money to easily pay for that? That right there would take me 2 hours to do from scratch, because I don't know how to do it, versus I can just work my job for 1 hour and pay that man to do it, and I give him a job and everything works itself out.
That is also a generational difference.
Well, yeah, but overall, my way is more effective. Unless the world collapses and now we don't have mechanics, that's the only reason I would ever need to know how to do that.
If you wanted to save a buck.
Well, actually, no, I'm saving money by not doing it. Because 2 hours worth of my time, say I get paid $30 an hour. 2 hours of my time is $60. He's going to do it for $40. So all I got to do is...
Who the hell's going to fix your car for $40?
No, it's an example. I'm not
yeah,
kidding.
but in this day and age, a plumber's $100 an hour.
Okay, if a plumber's $100 an hour, let's say, and I make $30 an hour, then I need to work a little over 3 hours to be able to pay for that job. Now, if I'm trying to do it myself from scratch and I've never went to plumbing school, I'm looking at an easy 7 hours working on this to make it happen.
Plumbing school?
So what is it called? Do you know the term for plumbing school?
An apprenticeship?
I mean,
plumbing school.
I guess, but there's like HVAC school, and there's,
you get an apprenticeship and you learn from a master.
There's got to be something like welding school. There's no plumbing school.
I mean, there's some places that have like little 1-year degrees for like machinists and welding.
Whatever it's called, I don't want to do that.
For the most part, it's learned from
an apprenticeship. Right. That makes sense. So I could spend 7 hours of my time doing this, or I could spend 3 hours of my time making the money to have him do this. So cost effective wise, it's more valuable, my time wise, to work for 3 hours on what I'm good at and pay him to do what he's good at, versus me going down there and fucking with it for 7 hours. Now I've worked 7 hours and it cost me $50. Well, think about that.
Well, it didn't technically cost you anything.
Well, no, you've got to have the material.
Well, yeah, the materials.
But think 7 hours of my time. 7 hours of my time.
Is money.
Exactly. 7 hours of my time. 7 times 30. What is that? I mean, that's a lot of money.
And
a lot more than it would have taken to pay him.
What makes the difference is it's not where you want to spend your time anyway.
That's it.
That's true too. So I find it cost beneficial, and I'm miserable with my hands in a toilet. I've done shit like that. I don't need to.
You know, there is a reward for that kind of hard work, though, because you feel a sense of accomplishment when you learn something new and you figure it out.
Nope, not for me. I just walk away irritated as fuck. Even if it's fixed, even if I did a great job and it's installed properly and it looks beautiful, I don't give a shit. I'm very angry by the time I walk around, because I've spent 7 hours pouring sweat, having to learn new shit, and I'm like, I'll never do this again. I'm so pissed off that I had to do this in the first place, and it's something that I don't enjoy, that I'm never going to do this again. Versus if I would have worked those 3 hours, I actually enjoy what I'm good at. So that's kind of the way I look at it. Now, if I had to do it, That's different. You know, if you've got to do it, the world's ended and now you need to do this, well, that's fine. Like, that's a different scenario. But for regular life, yeah.
You got to shit and plumbers are 2 weeks out.
Just go out there with the dogs, take a shit, man. Just go shit in their yard. They'll be like, what the fuck are you doing? This is their toilet. Get out of here. But yeah, that's that was always,
Poopy.
you know, my the way that I did. Now, one of the beautiful things is, you know, of course, my dad being very daddish, he would always come to me and he would say, Al, you need to come down here and watch this, son, because I ain't always going to be around to fix this. I ain't always going to be here to take care of this. So what are you going to do when I'm gone? How are you going to change this oil? And, you know, I'm 6 years old, and I'm like, I don't need to know how to fucking change oil. But he would go on about it. Now, you paying attention? You watching? I was half-ass paying attention, half watching. Didn't give a fuck, because that's not something I'm interested in. But all these years later, it's a beautiful thing that now I can flip that around on him. Because he'll come to me with a tablet, right? And he'll say, this pop-up thing keeps popping up here, and I don't know how to fix it. And he'll hand me the tablet, and he'll start to walk away. I'm like, no. Hey, come here, buddy. Come here. Am I always going to be around to solve your problems? No, I'm not. What's going to happen when I'm gone? What are you going to do then? How are you going to fix your computer then? And he'll sit down with me, and I'm like, hey, you paying attention? You need to pay attention. So I love doing that to him because he's like, fuck you, man. Well, he just hates it, and it's so funny.
I think part of the generational difference, too, despite what younger people gripe about, we have more money. And
That's
more,
true.
And more disposable income.
Well, that's just the whole, I mean, that's our entire...
That's our country.
Yeah, that's our society.
And we have so many, we've talked about privilege, we have so many privileged people that absolutely refuse to acknowledge their privilege. Mm-hmm. And, you know, when I think of my grandfather, if they didn't fix their toilet, they didn't have the money to hire anyone.
Right.
Like, it would just never get done, and they'd just be shitting outside with the dogs.
Exactly. But I think if you took that grandfather and transplanted him into, you know, being born in 1985 or whatever.
Yeah, but that's what makes a generation.
I know, but what I'm saying is...
That's what I said.
I don't
I think it's a generational
Yeah,
difference.
it's not person to person. It's actually just generation differences, and you don't have to do that because you have a machine to do it or a person to do it.
We live in such a lucrative time, and things are more disposable. We actually have the ability to just frivolously hire people to do everything for us.
Right, and that's the thing is that, you know me, I'm an end of world type of person. I like to be prepared for that, but if the world did end and I needed to fix my car, I wouldn't know how. But I am not going to learn how to do everything that everyone else... I'm not going to become a jack of every trade on the off chance that the world ends. I'll just get rice pallets and things like that, and lots of ammo, and just hope for the best.
And if it was Mad Max, then you just take out the guy that does fix his car.
Yeah, I would just take his car. Exactly. That's my plan. Literally, everybody's like, "Oh no, for the end of the world, you need to learn how to farm." I'm like, no. There's a lot of food in this county. I can survive for the next 10 years off their canned food. That's kind of just the way I look at it. You know.
Somebody was like,
So you would be on the what's his face's from The Walking Dead, Negan. You'd be Team Negan.
Oh, we are Negan. Absolutely, yeah.
See, I've never seen that show.
Yeah, no, we're just taking what we need.
After Carl died. I was like,
Now maybe you ruined it for me. What if I decide I want to watch that show?
You'd forget who Carl was by that point.
I don't
watch
forget
Game
anything.
Of Thrones first.
That's my problem. I remember everything.
Watch Game of Thrones first. That one's better.
We watched the first episode of Game of Thrones, and they pushed the little kid out of the window, and my wife turned it off, and she said no.
No.
Couldn't handle. Wasn't it? Who? Oh yeah.
He was
no,
the kid who becomes like the bratty king, right?
The sister and the brother were screwing.
No, he's the one that ended up in the wheelchair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he lived. You might want
As
to
a
tell
cripple?
her that.
Yeah,
He survived.
Talk about lifestyle.
As a cripple. Yeah, but my wife can't handle things with kids getting hurt.
Yeah, I don't like that shit either.
I feel the same way about dog movies. I won't even watch them.
We'll
even
watch.
if they have a good ending. I'm like, at some point, the dog's going to hurt us, Paul.
I can watch the kid throw it off the building because I know that's fake, but I can't watch like a child murder.
That's what that was.
But he didn't die.
But you didn't know that on that episode.
I also didn't know that was going to happen.
But you kept watching.
Yeah, I had to find out if he died. Didn't it end
typically
like a cliffhanger?
Typically an 8-year-old who gets pushed out of a freaking tower window doesn't survive.
There's hay.
It's like an Assassin's Creed moment. He dived from 800 foot into a pile of hay. Okay.
Just walk it off.
Yeah.
All right. I guess it's my turn.
Tis.
Man, I don't know. I have a bunch of them. The one that I will share is that I wait till the last minute to do anything.
Oh,
And I've been doing that my entire life, and you would think I would have learned.
Well, no, because the thing is with all procrastinators, they're eventually. Why are you licking your? Why are you?
They're extra dry.
Go get you some chapstick.
He's like over there
Viciously
licking his lips at me.
While I make eye contact.
I'm flattered, man.
The eye contact.
I was like, I'm married.
Feed him something quickly.
I could be in probably an asexual gay relationship.
An asexual gay relationship.
Then you're just hanging out with your buddy.
Yeah.
That's literally what they are.
Well, the thing with procrastination, if you were getting bit on the ass enough, you would stop. But the truth is, you're getting things done eventually, and it hasn't bit you on the butt so hard that you have stopped.
It's because I'm too smart. I mean, you think that's not like like I'm saying, like I'm hyping myself up, putting myself on a pedestal, but that can be an issue. A lot of smart kids in school, they don't do well because they're bored as shit.
Well, that's what, when I was drawing, is because I already got whatever it is they were teaching.
Yeah.
Or I already knew
Learned it at home.
Or already knew more than them.
Yeah.
It feels like
that's definitely been an issue.
It feels like that's how I get my juice, though, like, because the task seems so mundane and boring, but I get my juice when it's like down to the wire, and then I accomplish the thing. But that's not something you can keep doing as you get older either.
It depends.
It's not sustainable.
My wife will be like, "Why didn't you get this fixed?" I'm like, "I will." But like the tractor, you need to fix the tractor before the spring comes. Okay, well, if I fix it now, then it's just going to sit for 2 more months in the cold weather and probably be broken again.
Yeah. I'll just wait until everything's broken on it, and week before spring, just go out there and go
buy
like
a new one.
madman. That lucrative society shit. Buy the same model so I can rob parts off it at the end of time if I need to.
There you go.
So you procrastinate as well?
Oh yeah. That's part of my innate apathy.
Well, I don't know. Anyway, I think it could be a good thing, but a bad thing.
Now it's on a continuum. Like I remember in grad school, my buddy would wait till 2 a.m. to do a paper. Well, in grad school,
You can't do that.
I mean, he did.
Phew.
But
because they want 15, 20 pages, probably even more than that.
yeah, but he was able to do it. I usually put it off most of the semester and got done a week early. But he would get it done that night.
I think it's kind of odd for people that the moment they get it, they start working on it. And they're done within a week or two. I'm like, what kind of human being is this? That's because the vast majority of us will wait a reasonable amount of time. A week, 2 weeks. We don't do it the moment we're... Yeah. Now, 2 a.m., that's cutting it real fucking close.
Really close, because what if you can't get to some information you need?
Yeah, I mean, what if the internet goes out or your computer shits on you? I mean, there's 1,000 things that could go wrong there, so that's really pushing it. But a week or two is, I think, the average. But I have met those people, a lot of times they're females, that the moment they get it, they go home and do it. And they're like, no, I'm busy for the next week working on this. And I'm like, we just got assigned it. It's not due for a half a year. And they're like, no, I'm going to knock it out. And they'll just knock it out. I'm like, whew.
I think most women are, my wife's that way. I think most women are go-getters.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Most of the females that I know in that
I took that personally.
I didn't even recognize why you were laughing until you said it.
Man. You can still be a procrastinator and a go-getter. I'm going to defend that. You can still be a go-getter.
Can you have a type B personality and be a go-getter?
I have a mixture.
Well, I don't think you're type B.
What are the types?
Type A and type B.
Well,
I mean,
type
quickly
A
though.
is like
Always on time. Yeah,
Anxious.
everything's got to be done. Not necessarily anxious. They just tend to be because everything's got to be done on time.
Okay,
and
I got
in
it.
an
And
orderly fashion.
Type B is the opposite.
And type B are people are like, it'll get done eventually, man.
Okay.
Just chill out.
I got you.
what's the type where you're like, rules are stupid.
That'd be type B.
I'll wait.
It
that's
sounds
type
like
B.
though that you could
I
be a
guess I am
combination
type B.
of type A, type B, because
You can be. Yeah, it's always on a continuum.
Okay, yeah.
I think I'm probably type B with some things.
Then you could be like my grandpa who never changed the oil in his car. Like every time we'd go to like McDonald's or something, he would open up the hood and pour a little bit of oil in and close it up. And he'd just be, I'm like, and then he'd go 30 miles an hour down the. I'm like, we're going a little slow, aren't we, Grandpa? I'd be like, we'll get there when we get there, man.
I do like that. I do like that. People bitch at me all the time driving if they have to follow me because they're like, why are we only going 58 miles an hour? I'm like, because the speed limit's 55. I'm already speeding. What do you want me to... Do we need to go 65 or 70? Like, what are we going to get there a minute and a half early?
As I've gotten earlier, as I've gotten older, I've realized speeding is the stupidest thing ever. Because unless you're going like on a 12-hour drive, going 5 miles over the speed limit gets you nowhere.
No.
It literally doesn't. I mean, and
it's
I've ran...
idiotic.
It's the difference between a red light and not.
Legitimately, I have went the speed limit on like a 45-minute trip, and the person with me is doing 90 the whole way there, and when I pull into the parking lot, they're taking their seatbelt off.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you could have got a fucking...
Now-
you could have got a reckless driving misdemeanor, a traffic violation.
And you would have passed them as the cop was pulling them over.
Criminal traffic, yeah, a misdemeanor.
No, and so unless you're actually going like on a 12-hour drive where that 5 miles, because 60 miles an hour, that's 5
And then you're
minutes,
saving,
right?
what, maybe an hour or something,
Which is a lot from a 12 or 13-hour drive.
It is, but I'm still saying like an hour and you're risking, getting that several $100 ticket, and you're going to spend an hour with a cop.
You're not risking anything, though, going 5 over.
Going 5 over, yeah, no, you're not.
Most, I think, reckless driving is like 20.
Most
That
places,
happened
yeah.
to me just yesterday, actually. This guy, I was in the middle lane going like 50 in a 45. He was pissed off that I was in the middle lane going 5 miles over. So he cuts me off to get in front of me. And then he gets out of the lane. And then he hits the red light, but I don't. And I just keep going. So
How often... Did you guys ever play Mario Kart?
yeah, a little bit.
Do you remember no, not Mario Kart. I'm thinking F-Zero. You had like the little turtle guys, and you would like lap them like twice. And you always do the joke, I was like a little turtle guy. But, or who's in Mario Kart? Who's the slowest? Is it who you always pass? Is it
Yoshi?
Is it Toad?
I don't know.
No,
old.
Yoshi's the fastest. I think
Yoshi's
I think
fast.
I think it's Toad.
That's how old
You
I
always
am.
lap Toad.
We're gonna lose.
Toad gets there.
I've never partaken.
That's probably an age difference.
Mario Kart?
Yeah.
Mario Kart wasn't on Atari?
No, it wasn't.
It's Super Nintendo.
Yeah, I didn't get a Super Nintendo until I was like a teenager, man.
I never got one.
That can't be accurate. It came out in 92.
I was poor. Everything was secondhand.
I got a Nintendo, the first one, and then I got the first PlayStation. The But that's the only two. Wait a minute, I think I got a Sega in between there.
I got a PlayStation 2 because my friend gave it to me when he upgraded to a Slim. But I only had a couple games that he gave me.
Oh God, the PS2 was out when I finally got a Sega Genesis, and I thought I was the absolute shit.
So you had a Super Nintendo.
Sega
I
Genesis
don't think I ever had a Nintendo. I went from Atari to a Sega Genesis, and then Xbox when I was like an older teen and I could pay for it.
I feel like nobody really played the Super Nintendo. Am I wrong?
Yeah, that's
I
all
think
I,
my parents
that's all I played. Same with my wife. I
Never even played one.
I only knew
no,
one
I take that back.
person.
I
with
had
a
an
Genesis.
N64.
Did you?
Yeah,
I got that.
GoldenEye on that.
That was the last video game system that my parents ever got me.
Yeah.
Because in their generation, they could not fathom why new systems kept coming out. Like well, I just got you a Super Nintendo 8 years ago.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, yeah, but this one's got new games and new graphics and stuff. They're like, I don't get it.
But now I kind of feel like that.
Well, yeah, because once you get old enough, you start to repeat that behavior.
Yeah, so with like my PlayStation and my Xbox PS4 and Xbox One, everybody's like, you gotta get the next Xbox and the PS5, and I'm like, do I?
And I've
really there's still so many games I haven't played.
And I've
I
gotten,
don't think I will.
And just keep talking about what we're talking about. I've gotten more laid back as I've gotten older too. Mm-hmm. When I was a teenager, I was just probably worried about everything. It didn't matter. Like, oh my God, I got a pimple on my nose. You know what? When I work with teenagers in therapy, that's the kind of stuff that they do worry about. Other than the ones that have had severe abuse. And even then, sometimes they'll focus on something like that, right? And I'm like, what?
I was just thinking the teenager that's like, I don't know when I'm gonna eat again. It's like, poor sad little fella.
And
it's a thing.
It is.
Okay.
No, because he said that's what teenagers are worried about, and I was like, some of them. Some of them,
Some of them are worried
yeah.
about real things.
Yeah.
Yeah, not in our country,
It's rare.
It's rare. Unless their mom's like an addict spending all their money on other things.
Well, that's what happens.
That's what happens, yeah. There's plenty of things to keep children from starving, but, you can't control the parents.
Right.
But anyway, so what I would tell these kids, they'd be fixated on like a pimple or something, and I'm like, do you know what? Everyone's going to see it. I'm like, well, do you know what all the other teenagers are thinking about? And they're like, what? They're thinking, oh my God, someone's going to see my pimple. They're not noticing your pimple because they're thinking about their own. Because especially with teenagers, they're so egocentric.
One of the things that I would always, this is off topic to an extent, but it, as a teenager, it kind of does apply. Like when I was going through school, there was two things, and I still feel like this as an adult, and this is part of the reason that I got out of my former job. Because at my former job, the people that we would have in our institution didn't belong there. Certain ones of them. I would meet them and I could tell that they were very, very slow. And they would put them in practically cages with animals. And they would just get taken advantage of all the time. And I didn't like that. So that's one of the reasons that I left my old job.
Understandable.
It was frustrating because there was nothing I could do to change it. And I felt like it was kind of like my position should have been geared towards making sure that didn't happen, but they wouldn't allow it. So I was like, that's not, I wasn't kosher.
Well, and that was when I used to do social workish type stuff. I just got to the point where I felt like it was useless because it's like you can keep offering all this stuff, but it's just being you could give people $1 million a year, and by the next month they're still broke.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I realized how fruitless it was to just keep giving people stuff because they just don't appreciate it.
A lot of people choose to suffer, I think.
There are a lot of people that do.
But they don't always know it.
No, there's a lot of people, it's all they've ever known.
Well, the scenario that I'm talking about was putting people that were, in my opinion, intellectually challenged, and the thing is, that's quite the continuum, because, you know, what I would consider mentally, like, just intellectual, and what doctors would consider might be two different things. Like, I would see a very simple person, and I'm like, it's difficult for them to do anything in life.
Even if it's like in your Algebra 2 class in college.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're like, this guy's an idiot. What is he, special ed?
Right.
And you're like, I got an IQ of 105. You're like, dumbass.
Yeah. Well, I would see these types of people, though, and they would be put in general population with the other people that you're describing, that they've been given all the opportunities and there's no reason for them not to succeed other than they just don't want to. They enjoy partying. They enjoy getting fucked up. They enjoy hurting people. That's just who they are.
And that should be the way they're allowed to live their life, right?
I mean, outside of hurting other people.
Well, yeah, as I've heard other people.
Yeah, yeah. So, but these people that I'm referring to that were simple to where I felt bad for them, I could see that they had no real capability to take on the world. They would put them in there with those people, and of course they would get taken advantage of in a lot of different ways, be it physical, mental, emotionally. Yeah. And when I saw that occurring and no one really seemed to give a shit about it, I was like, this is not where I belong. And that's coming from me.
Yeah.
You guys know me. I'm not really
touchy-feely.
Yeah. But I saw it and I was like, how could you ignore this? What type of human are you to work here for 20 years and not have a fucking problem with this?
Well, what turned me off from the social work system was the people that, the ratio of people that really needed it, that I felt we had a moral obligation to help. The ratio of those people to people who just took advantage of the system was so out of whack that it just turned me off from the whole thing. Because they're absolutely wasting resources. You know, people are like, well, we should be able to afford to buy these people these kind of things. Like, well, we could if there weren't all these people taking advantage of the system.
I see the parallel now. What I was saying and what you're saying.
It's a very true statement. And I think that those are the people that do choose to suffer. They drain resources out of everybody.
To live a meager life. To
keep doing the shit they've always done.
Yeah.
You know? It's really...
And they don't have an opulent life. You know,
they don't even realize it. As much as they're focused on taking advantage, they don't realize that all the things that they get.
And we could be providing more to people who had the inability to actually take care of themselves.
You hit it. But then you get into that thing where who am I to judge? You know, it's so subjective to judge.
And then you get the people who really could be fending for themselves, that are the ones always pining for more.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that just rubs me so wrong, and I just got tired of the social work system.
I don't know the answer to that one, but
there's always going to be people that take advantage. It's called social loafing, right? You think about from the Smurfs. That's why communism doesn't work. You look at the Smurfs. Every Smurf had a Smurfing job, and except for one, right?
Papa Smurf?
No. Papa Smurf was Karl Marx. No, Lazy Smurf.
Oh, Lazy Smurf. Okay.
Everyone had a job to do, and eventually all the jobs were covered, and he didn't have to work. He could just sponge off everyone else. And he did.
What did the girl do?
I'll let you think about that for a minute.
She doesn't have to be somebody's sexual thing.
Well, how else do the Smurfs have more Smurfs?
She wasn't popping out babies.
Not that we see.
Not on a kid's show, but that would have been her job.
I think it's because men just think about sex. So you introduce any female into the scenario, including a blue Smurfette, she's going to be the sexual object.
I don't think it's sex so much. I think we're just thinking about biology.
And everybody else has an outie.
Unless they're like frogs where they can just take on different ers. And I don't know the biological makeup of a Smurf. I assume they have the same components as a human.
But how would the male Smurf, push a baby out? Or do they lay eggs?
Maybe it's like a
Do they
seahorse.
poop eggs?
Do they? I mean, I.
Or are
just
they
assume-
hermaphroditic? You know?
Well, that's what like a lot of
We need to
reptiles.
understand Smurf biology before we start judging them, guys.
That's what I said. Like if they're reptilian in the way that they procreate, and they have asexual characteristics, but I'm guessing Smurfs seem to have gender roles like a human, right?
They do look very human-like.
So outside the blue skin and being like
Smurfette had heels.
an inch and a half tall, I just assumed Smurfette had one job, and that was
the oldest one in
The
the...
funnest job.
to continue to perpetuate the
Whatever.
species of Smurf.
How do you know she won't up in there with Papa Smurf? And
Well,
you know that the woman is
well, there's okay. Well,
the
I won't-
woman is the neck and the man is the head. So she's turning. We need to do this. We need. How do you know that?
well,
But if she was with Papa Smurf, then that says some real daddy issues. there.
see, so here's the thing: when you have this is a commune, right? And that's why our
Are they a
society.
commune?
Yes, they're a commune, and that's why communism doesn't
serious
work
about
on a
that.
big scale, but it works on a very small one. You could actually argue that humans are designed for communism, because we're very tribal, right? Where everyone has a job, everyone has a task, and you function as a tribe.
And if you're looking at those cults,
But
you've got something.
But on a large scale, like what we have in modern society, it just doesn't work that way like it did, 10,000 years ago. So you look at the Smurfs, the way they would operate, since there's only one Smurfette, and who knows what her gestation period is for reproduction, she's only going to pick the best Smurf to Smurf with.
Do you think, or do you think that
She's not going to
To
Smurf with all the
Smurf.
Smurfs.
I don't know. I mean, if you
And
look at
Biggie's imagination.
That would be-
if you look at a lot of early civilizations, literally just everybody in the village went after it because you want to. It didn't matter whose kid you had because you wanted the maximum potential to get pregnant and produce offspring.
But
so
she
you would
could-
fuck everyone in the village.
But she could.
monkeys do.
But my point is
the bonobos.
her being the only female Smurf. She has the power to be picky and choosy, and she's going to choose the alpha Smurf.
That's true.
I love how you brought that right back to that. I love it. Well, in that case, I respect her Smurfdom and her choices.
See, I don't think she. I don't
to
think
choose
she.
the alpha Smurf.
I don't
Now,
think
what
she
if
just
the
Smurfed
alpha
everyone.
Smurf-
and
though,
not
was
smooth
shooting-
lazy.
What if
Smurf
the alpha?
lazy.
She's smooth. She's smooth to lazy.
She's smooth, not Smurf lazy.
Oh,
lazy can't
Well,
doesn't deserve a Smurf.
No.
Dead fish Smurf. Yeah.
And my guess would be lazy was getting just the bare minimum handouts of everything, and he was
Yeah.
okay with that, and they had one Smurf,
But they never
too many.
shamed, did they? They should have shamed.
I think they say, "Oh, lazy."
Yeah, there was like a
Yeah.
low key shame.
Oh, okay.
The '80s didn't shame very much.
What a shame.
It was because it was Mr. Rogers.
Hmm.
I love you exactly the way you are. That's what he would say.
Lazy.
For
and
who you
independent.
So
are.
how did
He did though. I believe that Mr. Rogers loved me.
So how can you have non-judgmental attitudes, which I believe are important, but not raise a whole generation of narcissists?
Well, you have unconditional positive regard the way if you sit and freaking watch Mr. Rogers, he was just a sweet man. That's all. And
Yeah.
he taught kids things, and it was an unconditional, I love you.
But Mr.
for who
Rogers
you
would
are.
still encourage you to be productive
Exactly.
and have responsibility.
Yes, and that's what people miss about Mr. Rogers, or they don't because they think that it has to be an either or, but it can be. Mr. Rogers taught or should have taught that it can be a this and that. You can be a loving person and have high expectations of others.
And I was thinking about that today, about the whole travesty that's cancel culture now. you know, you can't. People act like saying something that is not politically correct is the same as not caring. You can care about someone and still say something that is objectively true. Mm-hmm. They don't have to exist, you know, outside of each other. It's like,
right.
If you say something about a person, like of a different race, that is not necessarily flattering, but it is true, that's not the same thing as just being mean and hateful. Mm-hmm. Unless you're actually being mean and hateful, right?
Well, and also, do you have a purpose for what you're saying? Because sometimes true statements don't always need to be said if there's not a reason to say them. You know, just like some kind of random observation about somebody. You know, yes, it could be objectively true, but what? You know what I'm saying?
I don't know. I tend to err on the side of just, if it's true, it's true. I mean, any kind of rejection of truth, you're limiting yourself, whether you want to hear it or not.
I think, once again, it can be this and this. You know, it can be some responsibility in what you say and truth. You know, like, I'm trying to think of an example. You know, if I say that, you know, all right, the blonde thing. All right. So if I'm sitting across from a woman and she's blonde, or, you know, am I going to say something about her being blonde just to objectively say it if it's not even relevant? You know what I mean? Like, make a statement that can be, like...
In a pejorative way?
Probably, yeah, because that's how people take it. I mean, because I just think a lot of things that people say are fluff. And you can... I mean, why do I need to say that about her being blonde? Unless I'm making fun of it, or...
Or, like, complimenting her hair.
Or yeah, there's a purpose. But me making an objective statement about her hair could be taken offense to.
But nobody is. Does that apply to to cancel culture?
Well, I think that's what brought some of it on. Is that there were people that weren't taking a bit of responsibility for what they say. It doesn't. I mean, you can.
What I hear all the time is, well, that's not nice. Well, that's mean.
Yeah.
But is it untrue? Because that's what matters, right? Is it true or is it untrue?
But even if it's true, did you need to say it?
Maybe.
Because that's okay. So then that's fine. But like, if you're just taking responsibility for your words, I think we all have to be discerning. You know, it is what I'm saying something that needs to be said. I mean, I'm famous for that, where I'll talk a bunch of shit and I'm like, oh, this person's completely checked out on me because I'm not relevant.
Most of what I'm definitely seeing though with the cancel culture is different than that. That's just using common sense when talking to people in social interaction.
And that's what I'm saying.
That's more of a level of like social intelligence.
Right. And what I'm saying is that should be our judgment of criteria. Mm-hmm. Not what the cancel culture people are doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you can't even say anything constructive.
Right. Yeah, so truth goes out the window, and
then you're just living in a house of lies.
Yeah.
And that's what we have, where people are just, what did George Carlin say? Political correctness is fascism disguised as manners.
Mm-hmm. But simply taking responsibility for your words is not a bad thing.
No, of course not.
But now, what are people supposed to do? You know, when you because now they have to keep over correcting each other. They can't get to this medium ground where they're gonna have objective news feeds like back in the 60s. I think for the most part, the newscasters were pretty objective.
Oh yeah, I saw
Walter Cronkite days.
Walter Cronkite. You know,
Yeah.
I saw like the Atlantic did an article that had said that being a journalist during the Trump era was the same as the kids storming Omaha Beach. Yeah. and it wasn't hyperbole, right? You could tell the way they kept talking about it, that they believed it.
Yeah.
What?
They believe it. Yeah. So now,
What level of delusion?
Well, that
the
happens
right
when
has
you're
got to,
when you're so far removed from war and strife. You're going to convince yourself that your daily routine is war and strife.
You know how privileged...
Because you long for that, because that's where heroes are made.
Yes.
And you've got to convince yourself that you're a hero in order to build your ego.
That's virtue signaling.
Yeah.
And that's virtue signaling in a nutshell. And it's the height of privilege because you're basically artificially creating suffering.
Mm-hmm. That's a natural human thing. I mean, you can't beat them up for that. Although it's silly.
Yeah, your life is so comfortable that you're having to manufacture fake suffering.
Yeah. You have to have strife. Human beings without strife, I mean, when you do have those, those kings and rulers that have zero strife, truly, like in their personal lives, they're useless. And they become fuck-ups for a good reason.
Of course.
You have to have strife.
Because suffering is what creates growth.
Yeah.
we've already talked about that.
Yeah, we've talked about that a lot because it's true. It's just objectively
true.
true.
It is.
So reining it into what we were looking at, though.
I think it's too late for that.
Yeah, well, I mean, how are we going to end this properly?
Yeah,
then?
because we're kind of getting towards our time.
I got a secret.
What's that?
I didn't research anything.
Oh.
Oh, with time periods?
Yeah.
The thing is, I think the point is, I read an interesting article that one of Jung's students, Maria something, now I can't remember, they were having a problem, and I want to say it was the 20s or 30s, with man-child, just adult men living adolescent lives.
Yep.
And I was thinking, and they were talking about how that was paralleling like incels and stuff in our world now, not just our country. It's happening all over in first world countries. And to answer your question, which I guess for everyone listening was, what time in history parallels this? They all do. Mm-hmm. Yeah, eventually, because you had asked, do people change? Do we think people can change?
Yeah, we didn't answer that.
And my answer is no.
Mm-hmm.
And now I do believe as a therapist in individual change. But as a collective, I don't think people change. We just continuously repeat the same mistakes over and over and over again. Mm-hmm. In our own lives too, but in a whole, or as a whole of society, we're always repeating our mistakes, and it comes in waves.
Do you think people can change individually or societally or both?
Individually, yeah, but I think it's very rare, and it takes
a lot of work.
Yeah, a lot of work, and
well,
you can't change people. They have to willingly do it themselves. Mm-hmm. We've tried to change people for using external forces, and it never works.
It's temporary.
Because you've got to accept it internally.
Yeah, it's temporary.
Mm-hmm.
But I do agree with Callie societally. No. Mm-hmm. It might change for the meantime. It might change for a generation, 2 generations. But when you're talking about an entire civilization, Absolutely not.
No,
No.
history just always repeats itself.
Yeah,
It might
brutally.
look a little bit different, but, I'm guessing what made you think about that was the Gina Carano thing, when she was comparing what was going on now with...
No, actually, it was McCarthyism, which I was going to research. But I did not.
Well, and that was... and McCarthyism was a type of cancel culture, too.
Mm-hmm.
Even though it was mostly
communist.
just, to my knowledge, impacting Hollywood, not like your average Joes.
Yeah.
Whereas now your average Joe is not safe to the, what do they call that, Twitterati?
Twitterati.
Is that right?
I don't know. I've
Did I
never
use
heard that, but I like it.
The Twitter Gestapo?
Well, your papers.
What about you, Nana?
Oh, me?
Yeah, do you think people can change?
I have to believe that they can.
Collectively or individually?
Both.
Why? Why do you have to believe that they can?
Because...
First of all, have you seen an instance of it societally?
Yeah, I'm not talking about individually. We see in therapy all the time, we see people get better.
Yeah, I think individually that's pretty common sense. But societally, think of one time where it's changed and stayed
Has there
changed.
been a civilization that didn't collapse in the same way that all the other ones did?
Swedish people are doing pretty good.
Are they?
Are they?
That's
The
not what I
Swedes?
read.
No, that wasn't my answer. That was me being silly. But,
See, I just accept.
I do. Okay, so
That's
let me answer this thoughtfully.
Okay.
I do believe that people change societally, but I think it's incredibly slow. And
You think we're better now than we were 6,000 years ago?
of course,
Why? What
Well,
gives you that impression?
well, it's not all jungle, and I don't have to get raped or whatever. That we're not 6,000 years ago.
I mean, we've definitely evolved in technology. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm never going to argue that. Unless we hit like some weird
Or die
waters of Babylon, World War III, where everything becomes irradiated.
or die by, an animal. What would that have been like back then? That would have been scary.
But we're arguing
But
about
also,
people, not,
I mean,
not
Lebanon right
technology.
now is pretty scary. So,
Oh.
and what happens when we become Lebanon?
Okay, wait a minute.
Now your child might get their arm cut off.
I
Yeah.
can't
You get an
handle. All right, I
inoculation.
gotta go
that's-
back to
you
Cali
might
because I
get
can't
raped,
handle
you might-
Lebanon at this point.
Well, that-
Drink dirty water and
Well,
die.
the thing is, that's happening still in the world.
so
right?
the point that you're trying to make is that we're no better than what we were 6,000 years ago.
On a human level, yeah, that's the point I'm making.
And you don't think we are?
No, I don't see any evidence that we're any different in the way we operate as people. Now, technology.
Oh, the way we operate as people.
Now, technology and stuff, yeah. But
Like our basic drives.
yeah.
That either
Isn't that what we're talking
make
about?
us or kill us.
I thought that's what we're talking about. I don't see any evidence that we're any better as human beings than we were 6,000 years ago.
I think we're a lot more complicated, don't you?
No.
We stay alive longer.
That's technology and medicine, though.
I don't.
I think
But
what
we
he's talking
invented that.
I think
I'm
what he's
confused.
referring to is ethics and morals. Ethics,
Well,
morals,
all
and
of
what we
that
do to
goes
one another.
together.
In what drives people, I don't see how there's any evidence looking at history that humans operate differently.
Innovation. We invented as humans, so all of us come together and move that forward.
And then we use it for war.
Well, I don't disagree. Not all of us do that, though. Not all souls are
And I'm sure
designed to do
6,000
that.
years ago, not all souls, when they invented the wheel, there was a lot of people that said, hey, I can move my vegetables with this. And other people said, hey, we can turn this into a chariot of war.
Yeah. So you're saying, that has it gotten any better in that respect? I would like to think it has. I think you're probably a lot more disposable. Look at how many deaths you got used to back then. You know, death was just something that happened like a lot faster, it's a lot primal. Now it's not like that, and I'm not saying there are some places like your Lebanon example.
Well, my pushback on that, even in a first world country, would be back then, if someone in your village, like you said, brutal primal death, got attacked by a cougar and killed. Yeah, it happened all the time, and it was always mourned by everybody in the village. Everybody
I wouldn't say people grieved any.
Everybody that knew about it mourned it. Versus in America, when you turn on the news, you hear about hundreds of deaths a day of different things that happen, and you don't mourn those people, even though they're the same.
Because society's bigger.
But
and we're a little more cold and callous than we used to be because we're downloaded with we receive notification of death daily. Versus back then, death was more often.
And during the
I'm blaming media, is what I'm saying.
Well, and during the Black Plague, when you saw carts coming by to collect dead, you would have been desensitized to it also.
Yeah, the desensitization.
Again, I don't think people change at all. Technology and stuff, I'm not making that argument. I think that's clear that we have better technology than 6,000 years ago.
Oh, yeah. But yeah, the desensitization of war, getting attacked by a lion, the Black Plague, just as we were desensitized from things because they occurred so commonly back then, I think, honestly, we have more desensitization. That's a difficult word.
Desensitization.
Yeah, there's a lot of Z's and S's in there. I think that it's more prevalent today because if it doesn't necessarily happen to your parents or your little sister or your wife, even if it happens across the street, I feel that people don't care as much because we're not a collective village anymore. Well, yeah. That's not my tribe. Even though we all live in America.
I don't know. See, I don't know what that would be like to see it. I mean, there's something different about seeing things and experiencing things versus the desensitization we're getting in the media. I don't know what the difference is. And how do we know that they grieved? Do we know?
I think it would be really weird to assume they didn't grieve.
Mm-hmm. I think human connection.
They found Neanderthal graves. Well, you're not going to have a funeral service if you didn't grieve, right?
Okay.
So I'm thinking a way to look at this is... I
don't know. I'm just saying I'm not...
Right. No, I mean, everybody's just thinking through it. But I think a way to think about this is... I don't think people are connected on a personal level like they used to be.
Well, yeah, and the internet has actually made that worse.
And our comfortable society has. I don't have to leave this house at all. I can order stuff on Amazon. I never have to speak to another person. And I can live
You're very
just fine.
Removed.
Right. So when my neighbor dies, now, that's terrible. But I might give condolences to his wife if I accidentally see her while I'm out on a walk.
But like,
chances are I'm not going to go over there and cry with the family and more because I barely know my neighbors. Hell, I barely know anybody.
In a tribal,
and that's not just me. That's the vast majority of people that became disconnected.
You're right.
And in a tribal society where the alpha gets killed by a warthog, now that village is struggling because their best hunter just died.
And that interpersonal struggle of who is going to become the next alpha makes it like a football team or a platoon.
But you don't think that overall
and you don't think
better?
people were scheming and stuff to become the next alpha?
You don't think overall, though, like overarching, look, go all the way out to space and look down. Like, we're not better? We haven't evolved?
I don't think we're better. I think we're more comfortable right now. Us.
Comfortable.
I would say
But that's just us, and that's just temporary. As soon as America's gone, then we're just like Lebanon again.
Yeah, no, I don't see any evidence that humans are different, and that part of that's evolution. All the drives that got us here are the same.
Now, I will, taking this in a technology way, I will say that I don't believe that we're better now than we were back then, ethically, morally, traditionally, just in any way other than technology and comfort. But if we were at some point in the future, do I see it through politics, religion, technology, any of that. No, I don't think any of that is going to make us better. Absolutely not. Because we've been trying that for thousands of years.
Why are we here?
But
because we had parents that birthed us.
But if you're looking outside of, I'm saying all of these things are not going to make us better. The only thing that's going to make us better is becoming a new species. You're going to have to take away the human element.
The grays.
Well,
be it through artificial intelligence of some sort, be it
the gray
through
aliens.
a chip in the head, be it through just natural.
Well, and of course, what we're actually selecting for worse traits now. So actually, you could argue we're probably devolving as a species.
Oh, soy boys getting to give their seed.
Well, yeah, we're selecting for things that don't necessarily make better people.
Sperm knows that. There's
No, but the soy boy that provided it sure does.
Do they
He
know?
knows he's a beta.
Does the
He's aware.
sperm know?
Well, sperm's not conscious,
Well, also though,
Well, you
I
know
mean,
what I mean.
I think the most realistic
but
one.
they have traits that would not have gotten passed on, 6,000 years ago.
Versus a chip in the head
I
or
hear
changing people in that regard with actual technology implants on each person, I think it's more likely that the next step in human evolution that's going to cause the change that you're looking for is altering genetics, playing around with DNA.
And even that, we don't know what the ramifications of that are.
It could be
And all
worse,
of a
but
sudden-
I'm saying...
Well, that's what Alan Watts was talking about. You could actually genetically create perfect people and end up in a whole different hell that you didn't predict.
Right, but if we stay on course and don't do that, then we're just going to keep the same cycle that we have been so far.
No,
which is
I would
normal.
say,
but
ironically,
that would be the only time we would get out of that cycle, in my opinion, is if we became something that was a new species.
I would say, ironically, it would take some global destruction that wiped out most of humanity and only the strongest survived.
And like a restart.
But we've
how
had
are
that
they gonna be
before,
evolved
and we still
because-
wound up in the same position. We've had ice ages. We've had things...
Eventually, yeah, because
Right.
because things will get hard, and then strong people will emerge.
yeah,
And make easy times, and then shit will, because it's always cycling.
Right, that cycle. But if you want permanent change, I don't believe that's possible for the human species. I think we'll have to evolve in order for that to happen.
And that would happen eventually over millions of years if we survive that long.
Right, but I think the only time for us to see it within the next reasonable future would be manipulating DNA.
I don't foresee that in the next 6,000 years.
I see no reason
Manipulation of
not to
DNA?
think we don't
No, just actual
continuously evolve.
evolution of people. I don't see that in the next 6,000 years.
Well, natural evolution's definitely not going to happen in that amount of time. But what about
Well, and like
artificial evolution?
and like I said, there's no evidence that our tampering of DNA is going to create anything good either.
No.
Yeah.
I
But the
just
fact
can't
that it is
think-
happening means it's going to make a change,
It
whether
will,
it be
yeah,
good or
yes,
bad.
it will make a change.
So we're just
That is
keeping our
true.
fingers crossed that it's going to be a good change.
Yeah, the road to hell's paved in good intention.
I just can't believe that there's just no
Purpose.
purpose.
You can't just accept people.
evolving forward. Like
Well, here's
my
the
mind
answer.
wants to go forward.
Well, so you do. You can't expect the whole world and 8 billion people to.
But it
you
is.
can.
It's just extremely slow, I think.
I don't. No, you can.
Okay.
People can individually,
Right.
but how many people are just going about their day, screwing what they screw and eating what they eat and pooping what they poop?
Gosh, it seems so easy to do that, doesn't it?
This is why a lot of people do it.
Why don't I do
Animalistic.
that? Why didn't I just do that?
You realize
Hedonism.
it's like Wall-E, people that the pleasure center, the
Yeah.
reward center of the brain,
Wally, what a good vision of the future.
Yeah, just a
It
bunch
really
of fat
was.
people
So-
on like lounge chairs floating,
Would-
slurping on
Drinking.
Slurpees.
Yeah.
Evolved, like a person who's truly evolved, are they more like me, like somebody who is just like obsessively not content and like forward thinking.
Well, you have
like
to.
nothing's ever good enough. So, but for people who are they less evolved, and is that the thing that makes us be evolved?
Are you trying to
Both.
say that I'm less evolved because I'm more laid back and accepting?
No, it wasn't personal at all. I'm
not a woman. I don't take things personal.
Okay, it wasn't.
It's not a personality trait of Callie.
He just totally shit on women, but it's fine. I understand how I understand how that I can put men through sometimes.
But see,
because I can totally do that.
But see, that's like the cancel culture argument, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is what I said really off? Because most women I know, that's the way they think.
We do think that way, and we put you through hell.
So me saying it, while is not PC to say that doesn't mean that I had ill intent, and that doesn't mean that it wasn't true, right?
Yeah, those things aren't.
Yeah.
I still love women.
Mm-hmm.
Well, anywho.
At least one.
At least one human. One is better than none.
Well, and my mom, so two.
And my mom.
I don't love your mom, even though she is kind of attractive.
All right, that's enough.
Oh gosh.
Oh jeez.
That's probably a good place to end.
I think it is. Thanks for tuning in, everyone, and we will see you next week.
Cue the music.
Cue the music.
Thanks for listening to the Biggie Callie Show. It's been a crazy ride, and Nana's here, you know. So come on back next week and give us a friendly ear. We'll have ourselves a merry time and drink American beer.